So you know the importance of socialising your dog and socialising your new puppy, but how on earth are we supposed to achieve that to high levels of success when as a world, as countries, as communities, we are on lockdown or even completely enforced quarantine? So welcome back to Will and Mabel. My name's Will, I'm a canine behaviourist, and this channel is dedicated to helping you become high-level canine leaders that can raise perfect canine companions. And now more than ever, I think we need to pull together and be able to help each other as a community so that when we come out of this global pandemic, we haven't got an overflow of dogs that are poorly socialised, poorly trained, that end up in shelters and then unfortunately euthanized. And as this global pandemic has started to devolve and become more and more serious and affecting more and more countries, extremely so with things like the enforced lockdowns and the enforced quarantines, one of the most common questions my inbox has been flooded with has been, Will, I've just got a new puppy, I'm following your perfect puppy course, I'm following your boot camp course, you talk a lot about the importance of socialisation, and now I'm terrified that I'm going to do a bad job with my dog because I'm not allowed to get out there and socialise them in the way that you tell me that I should. And that is exactly what I want to do in this video. Obviously, we're in unprecedented times. It's very difficult to give definitive answers to anything right now, but I've spent the last couple of days really trying to wrap my head around this problem and be able to give you as detailed and as informed knowledge as possible to help you ensure that you still come out of this with perfect canine companions. Now, before I dive into the two main areas that I'm going to discuss in terms of being able to socialise your dog in this global pandemic, I want to quickly mention that there is a lot of self-employed people out there that are going to really struggle, and this is going to hit our economy massively. Now, some governments are implementing methods to try and help people, like here in the UK, but that is more kind of helping the people in jobs. People like myself that are self-employed are noticing a massive hit, especially your local dog trainers. Dog trainers are having to self-isolate and lock down themselves, but myself included have noticed a huge dip. Obviously, we can't go out and do our consultations and training. Now, for me, I've got the online courses, and I want to thank everybody that has supported us through this very difficult time. That's allowing me to hopefully be able to maintain support in my family as a self-employed father and husband. So if you are interested in my training approaches, I do think my perfect puppy course, and especially right now, my boot camp course would be perfect for you to put your dog of any age through while you're having to spend a lot of time at home and self-isolating. It is an absolutely perfect time to put your dog through this boot camp protocol, which then in turn helps you become high-level canine leaders. You'll have a perfect canine companion, and it supports me and my family. So if that's something you're interested in, you're in a position to be able to do that, I would highly appreciate it. And if you work with any local dog trainers or canine behaviourists in your local area, see if there's any phone consultations you can do, any online consultations you can do if you're in a point or a position financially and you're stable enough to be able to keep up that kind of work. And not just dog trainers, just self-employed people in general. Obviously, I'm not downplaying the issues with the disease as a whole. I still think that's going to have obviously huge impacts, and lots of people are losing loved ones. But when we come out of this, there is obviously going to be knock-on effects in so many different industries. So if as a nation, as obviously the governments are doing what they're going to do, we can't really control that. But what we can control is supporting the people who we want to support where possible. So I would encourage you, if you can, please do. So I see kind of two fixes to this issue of not being able to socialise your dog, and I'm going to break it down into two parts. Obviously, like I say, we are completely in unprecedented times. This has never happened. Dog trainers and canine behaviourists have never had to advise on this, which is why I didn't want to rush this video out. Obviously, I wanted to get it out as quick as possible, but I've really taken a couple of days to really think about this and try and give the best advice possible, because obviously it's a completely new situation. And like I say, I've got two kind of approaches. The first is about socialisation in the form that we know it already, and that is about socialising your dog to as many different people, environments, stimuli as possible. Now, the first thing I want to mention in this is you absolutely must follow your local government, local authorities guidelines on things like self-isolation, social distancing. But here in the UK, we're still able to go out and about, we're still able to get outside. We're kind of following this at least 2 metre social distancing rule, unless you're in the vulnerable group of people that must stay inside. But for me, for example, I can still go out, I can walk my dog. We live in the countryside, so you can still get out in those areas and socialise them as best as possible. And even if they're going to have to see different people at a slightly distance, or a slightly greater distance to what we might encourage otherwise, there's still huge opportunity for you to get out and socialise your dog as much as possible, but you must follow. It takes precedent, it takes priority in terms of following government guidelines. Socialising our dog isn't an excuse to not follow those guidelines. And like I say, I'm going to break down some kind of things that you can do on top of this that are hopefully going to fill in those gaps that are going to be left, because unfortunately I don't have a magic wand answer to this. 100% there is going to be lots of environments and stimuli that you are not going to be able to socialise your dog to, like cafes, like pubs, like busy towns, busy environments, busy traffic, going and visiting schools or play schools or pre-nurseries, any kind of those kind of young children in abundance, to allow your dog to really soak that up simply isn't going to be able to happen. But obviously the first thing is check your government guidelines, check what the guidelines are in your area, and where possible, try and fill as many gaps as you can following those guidelines. Now, if you are on a full lockdown, full isolation, and you're stuck inside with a new dog that you're trying to socialise as much as possible, then there are a few tricks that I do think would work. If you're the kind of person that tends to be very quiet in the home, try and ramp up the noise, try and get the appliances going a little bit more than you might do otherwise, get the TV on really loud, let your dog become accustomed to the noises that you might not be able to take them to directly. But silly as it sounds, get on YouTube and play some time lapses or some videos of busy highway traffic, those kind of noise, crank the volume right up and be able to socialise them audio wise and visually if you've got a dog that will take in stimuli from a TV. That way you can put up different animals, obviously they can be looking at different types of people. It sounds silly, but every little piece that we can do right now is going to be able to kind of layer up on what I'm going to discuss in part 2 to make sure that when we do come out of this, we're in the best place possible. So use what you have at your disposal in the home. Keep the Hoover running and close to your dog. Keep the TV on, keep it really loud. Play music, dance, sing, try and be active, get some exercise in, run around your living room, do laps up and down the stairs. Anything you can do to kind of ramp up the energy so that your dog has to feel a little bit more comfortable. Dogs that thrive in that calm, quiet environment, and that's good, but it's important that we have a dog that is able to remain calm, well-mannered and obedient no matter what's going on. And that's kind of what we're going to discuss now in the second point to this. So the first point is, unfortunately, there isn't going to be a magic fix. Obviously, the best case scenario is what I discuss in my Perfect Puppy course, giving you those step-by-step guidance of what to socialise them to and when. A lot of that you're not going to be able to do, but where possible, mimic it on the TV with lots of volume, lots of sound if you can. Again, I know it sounds silly, but even just the noises will help. Make sure your house is loud and busy and you've got lots of things going on, just so that they can make sure that they are capable of being able to settle down, because that skill set of them being able to relax when the TV's blasting with highway traffic or motorway traffic, you've got the Hoover on, you're singing and dancing in another corner, you're playing, those kind of, for a dog to be able to go, whoa, that's a lot going on, but it's okay, cool, I'll settle down. That skill set will be able to transition when we come out of this to other areas that you haven't been able to socialise them to. Now, the second point I want to talk about really delves into the other areas of socialisation. Now, I always talk about that there's multiple areas to having a perfect canine companion. One of them, yes, is socialisation. But one of the other ones, and the massive thing that I talk about all the time, is about being a calm, consistent leader. Your dog, no matter the age, no matter the breed, must see you as its calm, consistent leader that it can look to for direction no matter what's happening. That ability for them to look to you for guidance and direction is going to be absolutely crucial when we come out of this time with a dog that simply isn't going to be as well socialized as we like. So I'm going to be talking a lot about leadership, so I wanted to start there because some of the things I'm going to talk about in a minute might be a little bit higher level theory, but a lot of it is going to stem down to this fact that we absolutely have to have a dog. At this time, more than ever, zero compromises. Your dog must see you as its calm, consistent leader. So the reason that we actually want to socialize our dogs is there's lots of different kind of canine behavior and canine learning theory that goes into that, and the developmental sciences. But ultimately, the vast majority of bad behavior stems from a dog that is fearful and anxious. So what we want to do is we want to socialize our dogs to as many different things as possible so they don't become fearful fearful or anxious, and then show the behaviours that display alongside fear and anxiety. That's why we socialise our dogs. Now, you can have the best socialised dog on the planet that isn't fearful or anxious of any environmental stimuli whatsoever, but that is absolutely useless if you're not a good leader and you haven't got good obedience with your dogs. That's why there's no one simple fix to any problem, and it's about having lots of different areas combined to create a perfect canine leader that has these perfect canine companions. Now, unfortunately, we're living in a time where that socialization bubble is kind of being taken away from us. Now, that lack of socialization may cause a dog to be slightly more fearful and more anxious of a situation. Now, if you have a dog that is fearful and anxious of a situation, there's lots of behavior modification we can do in the future to fix those problems. But the first thing I would do as a canine behaviorist going into that situation, the very first thing I would do is restructure that relationship between the owner and the dog, so that the dog sees that owner as its calm, consistent leader. Because, and this is where it's going to be really important for you guys that have got puppies right now, if that puppy grows up and it's a little bit more fearful and anxious than it might have been with better socialization, it doesn't overly matter, or it's not as critical if they first see you as a calm, consistent leader that they can look to for guidance and direction, and you have enough obedience to be able to tell them what to do, even if they are feeling fearful and anxious. So let's take this as kind of an example. You've not socialized your dog in busy environments where there's lots of people coming up and down towns because of the self-isolation. We can't do anything about that right now. It is what it is, so we need to move forward. So again, but you don't have good leadership and you don't have good obedience. We come out of the self-isolation, you take your dog into that environment, it becomes fearful and anxious, it will either then withdraw, or it will go into aggressive type behaviours, would be a very common thing we would see here. Or we can have exactly the same dog with that lack of socialisation to that environment. However, you have used this time to establish yourself as a really good, calm, consistent leader, and you've worked on higher levels of obedience in this time that we've got to be able to do that right now. The dog then goes into that environment. When we come out of this scenario, they freak out a little bit, they become fearful and anxious because they've not been socialised to the stimuli before, but the difference is they will now go, oh dear, I'm a little bit fearful and anxious. And the key here is that you'll now have a dog that will go, what shall I do? Then, because you've got the dog that looks to you for guidance and direction, because you've established that through your leadership skills, you now also have the obedience to say, it's okay, I understand you're fearful and anxious, I want you to walk to heel right now. And the dog can go, okay, cool, I trust you, I'm a little bit worried, but I trust you and I know how to do this, so I'm going to stay and heel. Then we can work on modification programs and re-socialization protocols in the future when we're allowed to socialize them, and that process will go much smoother over time because the dog will go, okay, I'm a little bit fearful and anxious, but I'm with my boss, he's told me he wants me to walk to heel, I can do that, so I'm happy. He does it and he goes, okay, nothing really bad happened there, that was cool. You do it again and he goes, okay, I'm still a little bit fearful and anxious. You want me to do that again? Okay, cool, I can do that. You repeat that process over and over, and your dog will then become socialized positively to that environment through your leadership and obedience. And right now, in self-isolation, in quarantine, yes, we can't do the socialization very well, but what we can now do, more so than we've ever been able to, because we're able to spend so much time at home with our dogs, is level up that leadership and level up that obedience, so that when we release all these protocols, all these isolation, social distancing, you've got a dog that is under control, even if it is showing a little bit of anxiety and fear. And because you've got that leadership and obedience, you'll then be able to modify the socialization, remove that fear and anxiety super easily, and then you'll be able to get to the point that you wanted to anyway. Now, it's a little bit of a roundabout way to get to the point of a perfect canine companion, but I promise you, everybody that's at home that's worrying right now that you're not able to socialize your dog, or you're more so your puppy the way you'd like to, you can be absolutely fine, but I absolutely implore you to work on your leadership skills and to work on your obedience. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dedicate this channel moving forward is going to solely be dedicated towards improving your leadership and drills that you can do to improve your obedience at home during self-isolation and quarantine. I'm going to produce all that content completely free of charge, and that way it will completely supplement my bootcamp course and my Perfect Puppy course, which, like I say, I would still highly recommend. I think now is a better time than any to utilize those protocols. And take the bootcamp, for example. In that bootcamp, I discuss lots of really specific blocks of time when you should be working on your obedience, and I do give you some drills in that course. But what you can do is you can go through that bootcamp course, you can absorb the theory to become a high-level canine leader yourself, and then you can tag on all this kind of bolt-on information that I'm going to produce here on this channel for free, implement that with the bootcamp protocol, and I promise you, you will come out of this time with a completely obedient dog, with high levels of obedience, with high levels of leadership from yourself that it can look to for direction. And then you'll be able to do the socialization a little bit later on. And as much as, yes, there is lots of puppy psychological stages where you really want to be capitalizing on that socialization, the fact remains, like I mentioned at point 1, do what you can, but follow government guidelines and advice. The stuff that you miss out on, you will be able to fix down the line, providing you've got good leadership and obedience. So I wanted to kind of really go on a bit of a deep dive. I can't see the cameras all the way over there, how long this video was. My eyes are getting terrible, I need glasses, but stop waffling, Will. Please, please, please focus on your leadership and obedience. I promise you, if you can do that, you're going to get through this stage with your dogs absolutely no problem whatsoever. So if you're interested in my courses, as always, the link is in the description box below for those. And like I say, I'm going to try my best to produce daily videos. If not daily, there should be 3, 4 or 5 videos going up a week of different tips, different tricks, different routines, different drills, different things that you can implement whilst being quarantined at home to really ramp up that leadership and that obedience. So I really appreciate you watching this video. It's excellent. If you're still here, you're awesome. That means you're taking this really seriously. If you're taking this seriously, it means you're going to be able to follow this. And if you follow this, you're going to be fine. So I promise you, it's just about execution now. Just carry on executing. Stop worrying, stop panicking, and just execute. And I promise you, you'll be fine. We are here to help you through this process as much as we can. That is what we're doing. Like I say, it's hit us massively, but we're not going anywhere. We're going to batten down the hatches, reduce our spending as much as possible, use the time that I've now got not doing consultations in person to be able to dedicate to these videos to help you online. So I hope that helps. I really do. I really want to help this community through this time. So thank you so much. I appreciate your support. You guys are all awesome. And I'll see you on the next episode of Will and Mabel, where we're going to be delving into some routines, some drills and some guidelines to be able to have perfect canine companions regardless of the quarantine and the self-isolation that's going on around the planet right now.